Okay, we're back. We have our HTML, we have our Sass and CSS, styling it. The next thing we want to do is make it functional. Right now, the way it behaves is, if I click a link, it just takes me to that. Not the greatest experience. We lose our branding, we lose our orientation, not great. We want to leave the image here and update this particular image. For that, we need to use JavaScript. Okay, I'm going to resize this panel a little bit so I have more room to type. Now, remember, onload is set on my JS Fiddle window. So any code that I write in here will trigger automatically once the page is loaded. So for instance, if I do a simple alert, you see that runs once the page is loaded. What we want to do here is first we want to set up our page. In order for the functionality for this page to be kind of set up, the extra behaviors really center around the functionality of this navigation. So what I need to do is have my JavaScript add behavior onto each one of these links so that when someone clicks them, rather than just navigating to that picture, it's going to, if JavaScript is enabled, it will display and update this image placeholder. Okay, so let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is create a function, and you'll see this happen a lot during the quarter, where I'll create a function called init. Init stands for initialize. That basically means run some code that will initialize our page and get it ready to interact with the user. Okay, so the main thing that I need to initialize on this page is this navigation. So I'm going to first create a variable that gets access to this navigation and the links inside of it. So var nav is equal to, I can use document get element by ID, but if you look, my nav does not have an ID or a class. So I can use get elements by tag name. I usually like to type a capital letter for the tag. It's not necessary anymore, but it used to be because Internet Explorer only used to understand the capitals. I still do it just out of habit. Okay. Now this will say, it says get all the elements with a tag name of A and store them inside of nav. Now this is plural, elements. So I should probably make this this variable here plural. So instead of nav, let's call it links. This will be an array of all the links inside of this page. But what if my page had other links? Let's say I had a footer and I had links inside the footer. I don't necessarily want to grab those links too. I just want these up here inside the nav. So here's a better tool. We've used this earlier. Instead of using get elements by tag name, we can use query selector to access those links much easier. So let's redo this. Let's use query selector. Now query selector will only return one thing. If I want to return multiple things, I need to use query selector all. Now the selector I need to use is the selector I would use to style these three links. Now, I don't want to style all the links on the page, just those in the nav. So, if you look, I can use this descendant selector, nav space A. It's going to get all the anchor tags inside of nav. Good. So now I have a variable called links, or basically an array called links that contains all my anchor tags that I need to work on. The next thing I need to do is loop through all of those links, loop through that array of links, and add the behavior onto each one of them, one at a time. The best tool to do that would be a repeat loop. I could manually add the behaviors on one at a time. But what if my navigation consisted of 50 anchor tags? Then the amount of code that it would take to do that would be onerous. So it's much easier to use a repeat loop to do a repetitive task and apply that functionality onto all of them. So here, I'm going to use a repeat loop. And JS Fiddle is being retarded, indenting my, there we go, curly braces on me. Okay, for. We've made for loops before, so for var I equals 0. Okay, what that does is it basically creates our sentinel variable so that our repeat loop knows when to stop. Now I'm going to create another variable in here that's going to keep track of how many items are inside of links. So I'm going to say links.length, right? So actually, whoops, links.length. And what I want to do is repeat while I is less than links.length. So I is less than links.length. So this one statement says, this condition is while I is less than links.length. That's the number of anchor tags. We know that that number is 3. And then I need to increment I so that the sentinel variable will ultimately prove this condition false, and then we're out of the for loop. Okay. So let's see how this works. I'm just going to alert, again, I'll alert I. Let's see what happens. Okay, this function won't run until I call it, so the first line I'm going to need to call init. Okay, there we go. So there's 0, 1, and 2. Okay, we ended up getting 3 alerts, number 0, 1, and 2. Remember, arrays start at 0. Okay, so we know that's going to work. Now, what we want to do is add behavior onto each one of those links. So I'm going to say links, right? Now, links is an array, and I want to access one item at a time. So the one thing inside this repeat loop that changes each time is this number I. So links I. So the first time the loop runs, links I is going to be links 0. That's going to access this first link. So links I dot on click is equal to, and then I need some code to run. So in this case, I'll just create a function right here, and I'm just going to say alert. In this case, I'll just say test. Let's see what happens. Test. Now, did you see how the link did what I wanted it to? It alerted test, but then it also navigated. Let's try that again. That's because the anchor tag is following the href. It's doing exactly what the anchor tag is supposed to do, follow its href. But we don't want it to do that. We want it to short circuit it. We want to trick it. We want JavaScript to tell HTML that the link wasn't clicked, and then the JavaScript will take over and do what we want it to do. So in order to fix that, there's a trick for that. And in the first part, if I type prevent default, actually, I need to pass in the event object here. So I'll just say EVT, and then EVT dot prevent default, like that. Now when we run it, you see that it doesn't navigate away. It runs that test, it shows us the test, but it doesn't move away from the page. So the anchor tag is not thinking that we clicked on it. That's exactly what we want. Next step is we don't want to alert any information. We want to display the picture. So how do we do that? Well, let's look up here. If we look, our anchor tags have an href property and they have a title property. What we're after is this href property. We want to display the picture, and this is the link that takes us to that picture. Now, links_i.onClick equals this function, event.default. We want to access the link's href property. The cool thing here is all of this code is running in the context of this link, right? When I click on this link, run this code. So there's a special keyword that we can use. So event is the occurrence of this click. And this event keyword has some special properties to it. One of the properties is called target. And what this does is it tells me what was clicked on. Event.target, the target of the event. So if I, in this case, say event.target.href, and let's alert that. See what we get. Take out that extra space. Good. Let's run it. Notice how it gives me the URL for that image, Rose. Big Ben, it gives me the URL. So I can use this information to get access to the pictures. So I don't want to alert that information, I want to use that. So what I can say is my image, if you look here, my image has an ID of pic. So I can access this image and change this picture's source property to whatever the href is on the link I clicked on. Okay, so let me say that one more time. Change the image's source attribute to the href attribute of the link I clicked on. So this is how we would do it. Event.target.href. I can say something like this. Document get element by ID pic dot src is equal to event.target.href. Now you can see how that looks pretty ugly. We'll test it out, see if it works, but later we'll come back and clean up our code. Okay, great. Now the image is changing. The text isn't changing because we haven't done anything with that yet. Okay, let's make this easier to read. All of this gets pretty messy. That's a lot of typing for one small image. This is where a shortcut variable can come in handy. So I'm going to cut it from here. And in the top of my function where my variables are, I'll add my actually right here inside this function I'll create a variable. So var pic is equal to pic is equal to document.getElementById pic. And then down here, instead of all of that, I can just type pic. Pic.source is equal to event.target.href. Let's see if it still works. Whoops. Run. Okay, still works. Better. So now my code's a little bit easier to read. I have a variable here that points to my picture, and then down here I'm just accessing the picture's source property, and swapping it out for the href property on my anchor tag. Okay, great. So now we have a functional image gallery, but we need to update the text below. Let's do that, and then we'll end this video. We'll start another video that will take us through making this code a little bit cleaner and easier to read. Okay, so to change the text below, you can see my paragraph has an ID of caption, so I can do pretty much the same thing. Var caption is equal to document get element by ID caption, and right below here I can say caption dot. Now remember how we changed the text inside a paragraph? You have to use its first child dot node value and set that equal to this text here, which is the title attribute on my anchor tag. So that would be evt.target.title. Let's try that. Great. Now we have a functional image gallery. We click the links, it changes the picture, and updates the caption text for that picture. We'll end here, and we'll come back and clean up this code a bit.